I hit my head against the wall many times with especially I was working with clients, and I actually my own experiences too. I did a lot of my own real estate projects, and I I built, for example, a condo conversion project, and right during then the market crashed. All of a sudden, all these guidelines were changed, and it made it more difficult to sell, and all these after a lot of money invested. Meanwhile, banks were getting bailed out, right? But the mom and pop type person like me that was just doing one single project here was getting squeezed because the guidelines didn't favor that person. So also just finding clients that were not approved for this or that, and never getting a clear answer from the banks on why that was happening. And one person was always pointing the finger at somebody else. It was just ridiculous stupidity, and nobody could even answer, or even, I think many people realize this shouldn't be happening even within these companies and banks, but their fingers were, their hands were tied.
Yeah.
Because somewhere along the way somebody says, this is what we're doing today. And then tomorrow could be different. So.
It's so funny that you were talking about the banks getting bailed out, because literally the genesis block of the Bitcoin blockchain was Satoshi inscribing the message, and it was the headline from the Times, Chancellor on the brink for second bailout for banks. And it's just so interesting to see that the evolution of why we're here and the fundamentals still remain, especially right now what we're seeing is a lot of bank collapses in the last few years. As someone that came from mainstream media, what do you think of the collapses in 2023 that started with Silicon Valley Bank, and then it's just been a cascade ever since? But a lot of the time, these banks that failed don't even hit the headlines.
Yeah, I think we need to let things fail. We need to let the system work itself through. We can't keep saving the day with taxpayers' money. I mean, it's just, there's so many things we could talk about here. But anytime we're gonna bail out a bank, what do they learn? What happens? So meanwhile, they're making decisions not to finance different people. At the same time, we're bailing them out. It's kind of a wild thing to do. Eventually, I think the system, if the system isn't working, and if they can't survive, let things kind of naturally take their course, then we need better solutions.
Yeah.
And that's pretty clear that that's what we do. And I think Bitcoin at the time and now Litecoin represent it's the people's money, right? You don't have these issues, and you're your own bank basically, and that holds a lot of promise. And I know there's been a lot of challenges naturally, because when you move from one system that's obviously big banks are heavily involved and a lot of money's involved, to something else, there's a lot of resistance for a while, but we're changing. It's changing.